Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look. Well, welcome to tonight's show, everyone. And this is Stewart. We got Richard Shaw with us, who has done a tremendous work on the Watcher series, and we're just honored to have him come back on and update us on some of the things that are going on in the world. And we have Larry with us. Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing?
Oh, doing okay.
Hello,
Rick.
Great to be back, guys. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Where should we start with this thing? Why don't we maybe start with your Watchers 10? You ran into kind of a problem with that. I guess my question would be, what kind of people are there that enjoy making these, what do you call them, artifacts that aren't really artifacts?
Well, maybe I should bring people up to speed on what happened and what our plans had been all along. And can you guys hear me okay? I just want to make sure.
Yes.
I found a way to get you up on the speaker, so that's helpful. In Watchers 10, the film was basically in three parts. One part of it was about this creature that I kind of called the fairy, and it's something that L.A. and I were shown back in 2013 at Jaime Maussan's offices in Mexico City. And he didn't know what it was, and he didn't want to let us do anything with it until they had done further testing. Well, I went to dinner with Jaime about a year ago here in L.A. and said, I've still got footage of that thing, and I think it's really interesting and fascinating and would like to know what it is. And he finally agreed to let us show it. Well, at another dinner we had a few months after that, actually in Beverly Hills, because Jaime came up to do some speaking and went out to dinner with us and said that he would let us have the fairy to test if we were willing to help him with scientific testing on it. And we said, yeah, that's what we'd love to do, because we got it to a point in Watchers 10 where, this thing looks like something out of the book of Revelation. It had like a humanoid-looking face. It had pointy ears. It had wings and arms and little fingers, and it had a stinger. The whole deal. It was really fascinating. And he sent us some x-rays of it, which we took to a veterinarian. And L.A. actually did this because I was editing Watchers 10 when he took it over and showed it to this guy. And I wasn't allowed to film him anyway, this veterinarian. He didn't want his face shown. But when he saw the x-rays that Jaime Maussan had sent us, he looked at it and said, well, it looks like a real thing to me. And then he was the one that pointed out that the white dots in the x-rays looked like someone had shot it down, because he had seen that kind of thing before in other animals that had been injured that had come into his office. So that started a whole thing. So L.A. was at a conference, a speaking event, and had two hunters come up and say, that's number 7 bird shot, because they were really well acquainted with the size of the pellets. And the pellets looked round in the profile view, X-ray, or even the straight-on view. They looked the same. And normally in an X-ray, metallic objects tend to look white. And we knew that because of the work that we had done with Dr. Roger Lear. So we thought, well, why would someone make a fake creature and then shoot it with a gun? It just made no sense. You know what I'm saying? So we went on the premise that, we need more testing, and I said, well, maybe we can get a veterinarian or someone at an animal hospital to remove one of the pellets for us, and then we can take it over to SEAL Labs and do an analysis on it to see what it's made out of. Because I talked with an expert, a ballistics expert, and he said there's a company in Mexico that manufactures these pellets, and they're notoriously dirty, meaning that there's a lot of gunpowder that sticks to them that once they're shot out of the gun, you have to clean the gun barrel quite often if you shoot with these things. So he knew all about it, and he knew the name of the company that made them and everything. So we thought we would get it analyzed and see what they were. Well, that meant that the ferry had to be brought to the U.S., and you can't go on a plane with a jar full of alcohol. So you can see the problem we have here. So we had an assistant, one of Jaime's assistants, whose name I will withhold at this point, drive it all the way from Mexico City to Los Angeles and go through customs with it, and got it into the country. And because basically there's no contamination or any kind of contagious thing coming off. This thing's been sitting in alcohol for years, and before that it was sitting in formaldehyde. At some point they had changed the liquid in the container from formaldehyde to alcohol. So we set up this appointment. L.A. found a really cool doctor in Agora Hills at an animal hospital there that was willing to do new x-rays, which I felt we needed, and also take one of those pellets out for us and do an analysis of the actual fairy body, right, as we're filming it, which was really, I had great fun watching this unfold. So everyone thought it was still real. I mean, everyone there at the animal hospital looking at it was scratching their heads. What is this thing? I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it looked real. But then he did a new set of X-rays that we watched. I had to put on a lead suit so I could still film the process. And in these X-rays, we started noticing details that were much clearer because this X-ray machine was really high res, and he output JPEGs for me so I could use them in this new film. And he said, something's wrong with the pelvis area. It looks like the bones are shattered and going in the wrong direction. So we figured, well, maybe that happened when the thing was shot. Maybe it damaged the bone structure. He said, well, that could be. Then we saw something else running along the back of the ferry, but it was kind of faint in the X-ray, and we weren't sure what that was. So then he started looking at it over on the table, and we knew that there was these metallic things under the skin, and he pulled one of those out with tweezers, and he pulled the heart and lungs out and put them in a little jar for us. And then we noticed that there were these funny little blue objects. And at first I thought, well, maybe that's calcification of the lead pellets that are inside of it, and some of them are just kind of sticking out. Well, L.A., I think, I was looking at under a microscope at one of the little hands of the creature and noticed that each of those fingers had fur on them, something you can't see with the naked eye unless you blow it way up. And I was kind of fascinated by that, but then L.A. also noticed those blue objects, and they took some tweezers and pulled on one, and it came right out. And when he looked at it close, he said, I think this is wood. And what had happened was the alcohol was gradually evaporating from the creature and leaving it, and the skin on it was shrinking, exposing things that no one had ever seen before because it was all covered with skin or fur. And now these things were suddenly being revealed. So we didn't know, we weren't certain if it was wood. It looked like wood, but we couldn't be certain of it. And so he cut a little tiny piece of it off, and I stuck it under the microscope and looked at it, and I said, well, it looks like it has grain in it. But it might have been some kind of bone fragment, you know. So I said, now this was after we had kind of pretty much determined that the thing was fake. I said, why don't we take that little tiny piece that you cut off? It must have been no bigger than a 16th of an inch. So let's burn it and see what it smells like. If it's bone, it's going to smell like bone. But if it's wood, it's going to smell like wood. He goes, great idea. So we went and got this little thing, and we burnt this tiny little piece, and it smelled like you just struck a match.
Mm-hmm.
And then we realized that was probably wood from a kitchen match. And that was used to make the arms, and then it was epoxied to the body. So then everything became suspect. At that point, we discovered that there was this piece of plastic inside the creature, and that was like used like an armature. You know, like how in movies they'll make a model of a creature, and when they used to do stop motion photography, they would bend it in small increments and then do frame by frame animation. That's what it looked like was inside. It's to support all of the parts of this little creature together with some kind of an internal thing to strengthen it. So now we knew it was fake. So then what we had to do was, and if I'm going too long here, just interrupt me, guys.
No, keep going. This is fascinating.
What we had to do then was, of course, everyone's disappointed, and Jaime's on the phone, and he still doesn't believe it's fake because it looks so real. So I told L.A., I said, we got to find out what parts made this creature, because I said, I still don't know what it is. Like, how were the hands made? What kind of head did it have? Where did the body come from? I mean, there's too many questions. And how did he do it? How did he make such a masterful fake? So L.A., he always does a great job in finding out where to get information, and he managed to get a hold of a guy at the Natural History Museum in Santa Barbara. And for $500, they were willing to do an analysis of the fairy while I filmed it. And we met a guy named Paul Collins, and this guy is so used to looking at bones of various creatures and anomalies and all sorts of different animals. He can identify stuff he had like this tray, for example, and it was like where owls had been for centuries eating rodents and things like that, and then they would, puke up the bones or, poop them out or something. And so for hundreds of years, this one little area had been doing that, and they had this screen with just soil in it and tiny fragments of bones, and he was picking them out and sorting them all. I go, why are you doing that? And he goes, because it lets us know what happened for the past 200 years in that part of the ecosystem, what happened with those owls and what they were eating as a regular diet. And he goes, see, look at this bone here. This is from a bird. Oh, and this bone here. He knew just from looking at a fragment of a tiny bone could tell you what it was. I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it. So he looked at our thing and goes, oh, this is put together from parts of a bat.
Wow.
And so he ran over and grabbed a box full of bat bones and a bat that had been preserved and brought it out, and its wings stretched out. And he goes, see right here? And he matched it up to parts of the arm on the fairy. He said, see, it's the same kind of bone and has the same kind of foot on the end. And sure enough, it did. It wasn't quite the same size. He says, because yours looks like it came off a really big bat, and so they were longer than the one I'm holding here. And I got to touch these things, and did you know that bats have fur that's just so soft and furry? It's, furrier than like a cat, unless you're like touching the cat's underside, its belly. That really soft fur is like the way bats are all over. And then he said, well, I said, so what is this, a bat head? And are these bat ears? And he goes, no. He said, it could be, but he said, I think it's from a small primate. And I said, what? He goes, well, it looks like someone took like a stillborn monkey, one that never really matured. It was like a really young monkey, baby that never matured, and took the head off of it and glued it to this body. And he said the body's probably from a bat or a bird or something like that. And sure enough, he'd get his tweezers out and he'd pull something up and go, see, there's glue here. And he'd point out like where it was glued together. And then he found that armature and pull it out. And he noticed, oh, look, there's indentations on the end of this armature, like where it grips inside the body. So they probably shoved this up behind the spinal column to help give it structural rigidity. And then he goes to the back room and he pulls out this book, and it's a catalog that taxidermists use. People that stuff animals, like that hang on your wall, they do a beautiful job of it, and they have to glue it all back together and make it all look real. Well, they have like special glues for doing that and all of this, and some of the glues are used to glue skin back on to where they're supposed to go. So he said, here's how they did that. He said they took these matchsticks and they took skin from an animal and glued it to this matchstick, so you can't tell it's a matchstick. It's got skin on it.
Wow.
But as the creature dried out and the alcohol dried out, it started pulling apart, and the alcohol probably was most responsible for attacking the glue that had been in there for years, and the formaldehyde, I don't think, affected it as badly. The alcohol tended to, make it come apart sooner. So there you go. But we had said at the end of Watchers 10 that we still weren't sure what this was. It looked real, but we're still needing to do more tests. We said we wanted to go to SEAL Labs and all of that. Well, come to find out, we really didn't need to go to SEAL Labs because we discovered it was a fake. There's no reason to go to do further, elemental testing at SEAL Labs and the electron microscope when you can see you're dealing with a matchstick and glue. So, but we said we were going to do that. But meanwhile, we still had people writing blogs, and whose names I won't mention, but saying, I knew it was a fake all along. But well, that's great because no one else knew it was. No one else could say with any certainty that it was a fake. And so what are we supposed to do, guys, when we're presented with something as interesting as this? Ignore it? Just assume it's fake? Don't do any research? Don't spend any money on it? Don't try to do anything? What if it was an actual creature mentioned in Revelation? Wouldn't that be kind of important if that was the case?
Absolutely.
I would think it.
You did exactly what you had to do.
We did what we had to do, and people are so afraid of being ridiculed nowadays that they've turned into wusses. They won't do anything if they're going to get made fun of. They don't want to be involved in it. It's really, Clint Eastwood uses more of a slang term about it, but I tend to agree with him.
Well,
I agree 100% with them. No one will say the truth. They're afraid of being, I don't know what they're afraid of. It's silly. This is pure science, and that's what we did. So I had this piece. I created it. It ended up being 40 minutes long. We released it for a few days, and then we discovered that Jaime Maussan hadn't seen it. And so we pulled it offline, and Jaime wanted to send me his own comments. I said, well, great. So yesterday I got 11 gigabytes of fresh video from Mexico City, and so I'm recutting this piece and adding Jaime's comments to it, and probably will re-release it again next week. And then we're going to have, we're deciding how we're going to do this because we want to show people the truth about the ferry and how it was tested and all of that. So what we may end up doing is, to people that ordered Watchers 10, we'll probably just give away this disc so they have the whole thing. And then new people buying Watchers 10 in the future will probably give them a 2-disc set, one with Watchers 10 the way we released it, and then one with the results of the ferry, like, in the same box. So that's probably what we're going to do if we can afford to do that, because it's more money for us to have to do it, but we want people to have it.
Wow. So does this fellow in Mexico, where did he get it?
Well, he was Jaime Maussan. For those who haven't heard who this guy is, Jaime has the most watched UFO show in the world out of Mexico City. It's a weekly show called Tercer Milenio.
Yeah.
He's been doing this for, 25 years. He's incredibly well known. He's something of a celebrity in Mexico. Everyone knows who Jaime Maussan is. And people from all over the world send him footage of UFOs from Italy, Russia, America, all over Mexico, Guatemala, Peru. He gets it from everywhere. And so therefore he has hundreds of clips of UFO footage. Now, not all of it is bona fide, but a lot of it's amazing stuff. It's just unbelievable. And Jaime's been incredibly generous to just give me whatever I need that he has. And so I always feel like if I can do anything to help Jaime, I want to do it. And he takes a lot of abuse. People say, he's easily taken in by things. Well, that's not true. What happened was a young man, probably, I don't know how old this kid was. At the time, might have been 13, 14 years old. Came to Jaime's office and said, I've got this creature that I found by the side of the road. And Jaime was on vacation when it happened, and his staff saw it and got all excited and called him. So Jaime, after he got off of vacation, came back, he looked at it and thought it was really amazing and wanted to do testing on it. So he told me today, he wrote me an email and said that they did some early DNA testing on it, and it came back as partially degraded, where they couldn't get, and that makes sense because it was given to him in formaldehyde. Mm-hmm. And formaldehyde cooks the DNA, we've been told. But originally, when he first got it, it hadn't been in there as long as it had by the time we got a hold of it. And they said it had the DNA of a bird. Oh. Part of a bird. Now, I said, could it have been a bat? And in Mexico, bat is murcielago, which is the name of my favorite Lamborghini sports car. A $300,000 Lamborghini Murcielago, really insanely cool car that I've always admired. But that's what they call a bat in Mexico, and so it might have been. Of course, they also said it was partially bird-like. They weren't sure. And of course, Ricardo, who was Jaime's geneticist that looked at it, he thought it was real because he saw the X-rays, saw that it had a skeletal structure. It was a real creature, and he was right. There were real animal parts there. This wasn't like just made out of coat hangers. This thing was like made out of real creatures. So it fooled everybody. It fooled Ricardo. It fooled our first veterinarian, and it even fooled Dr. Barry, who, when he first looked at it, held it up in the air and goes, I don't know what this is. It's not like anything I've ever seen before. And he had a staff there, and we all looked at it, and just no one could figure out what it was. And it took about an hour before we really knew for certain it was fake. Anyway, it was fascinating, and you got to do stuff like this. It's one of those things in life. If you don't do it, then you always wonder, and then you feel really stupid for not having investigated it.
Well, one of the things that Stewart and I did after, you had told me about it and I'd shared with him, and you put the video out, we mentioned on the show about it being a hoax, and we applauded you. I mean, absolutely. What you guys did was that was just right groundbreaking research. Even though it was a hoax, it doesn't really matter because you were researching, and that's exactly what you do, and we applauded you because the fact that you guys came out and told the truth, what the results of the research was, even though it wasn't maybe what you desired it to be, still you found out what it was and you revealed the truth, and I think that's super. I mean, really, I do. It's that's not done everywhere.
Well, thank you, Larry. I mean, that's what we try to do in Watchers. If we know that there's an answer to something, then we're going to tell people what the truth is about it so that they at least know. But I told Jaime in an email this morning, I said, what we need is one that's alive. And if you see someone that has seen one, we need to capture it, and then we have no doubts that it's real. Because the design of it was so much like the scorpions in Revelation chapter 9, it's almost like we got a foretaste of what it might actually look like. And we've had other people tell us they've seen fairies. I mean, this is not the first time we've heard about these things. I mean, we've heard about them since 2010 when we first started doing Watchers. People had seen them in Puerto Rico and in Central California and other places. They've ended up on security camera video and flying through people's backyards at night, and no one knows what it is. Now, some of them are strange insects. We know that, but this is not.
Well, let me ask you. Yeah, Richard, let me ask you, because one of the fascinating things that I saw that I wanted to ask you what maybe it turned out to be was, what were those wings that it appeared to have?
Those were bat wings, and I started researching bats after we realized that's what it was, because I kind of look at these for myself, and so if you go on YouTube, you can find basically anything.
That's for sure.
I put bats into the search window, and I get this thing, feeding bats. I'm going, what's that? feeding fruit bats. I go, okay, let me check that one out. I look at it, and there's this woman that's got this bat wrapped in a towel, little baby bat, eating a grape out of her hands and chomping away on it. It's the cutest thing I've about ever seen in my life. It's furry little head and its little beady black eyes blinking, and it's like just enjoying it. And then I saw another one where they had one and they were scratching it under its neck, and it like a dog. It had its eyes closed and a big smile on its face, and it loved every moment of the attention it was getting. And then I got to thinking, isn't it great how God makes animals respond to kindness and human touch?
Yes.
And it just, I don't know, it just touched my heart when I saw, here's a creature that we think of as being evil and weird and despicable, and here it's cute and furry and just as lovable as a dog. But they are also, some of them will carry viruses and things, so you have to wear gloves, and you have to be really careful if you don't know what you're doing with them, because they can make you sick if they bite you. And, it's part of their nature to bite things. So, it's not like they're your friend, but these were bats that were being raised from a pup, so to speak, and they're just adorable. They just really were. It would be fun to be involved with that.
Well, it's kind of like the Lord is saying, love is the answer to all of it.
To everything.
Yes, it is. It's the answer to everything. And yet, for some reason, I guess the Lord also says that the planet Earth is a pit with no water in it, or no love in it, basically. No real love in it.
Yeah.
Why would a person make such a creature? I mean, you go on YouTube and you get these guys that are doing all this fake stuff, and I guess they think it's really funny, but, we're dealing in an area that's not funny at all, ultimately.
There's various reasons, I believe, why people do this. I mean, some of them are artists that like to make ghoulish-looking creatures. They just get off on doing that. There's a guy in Japan that does it, and there's a guy in the UK that had all of this crazy stuff he had made out of little skeletons and stuff, and, Halloween kind of like stuff, And it's like, okay, cool, it's creepy looking. Okay, I get it, And then in this case, though, I think they wanted to extort money from Jaime. I really do think that's the whole motive about it. And I think they had a plan. I'm going to use this kid, and maybe the kid doesn't even realize it's fake, and we're going to let him find it so he can tell this story to Jaime. And then his mother negotiated a price that Jaime would pay to keep the creature and do testing on it, which Jaime agreed to and paid. And, of course, Jaime has a television show, so, he can show it to people and all that, but he hadn't done that yet. He hadn't exploited this thing yet. He was very cautious about it and hadn't made any claims that it was real or not real, or he just didn't feel he had enough information. So that tells me that Jaime is an honest man, and he's going to do things that aren't conventional because no one else will do it. And I respect him for that.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
But the people that did this made a lot of money off this little creature. Probably took them several days to build it. It was very detailed, incredibly detailed work. And then they had to have actual creatures. They had to shoot a bat, and they had to get a head off of a monkey, and they had to, carefully glue that and cut skin and mold it all together and put that stick down the back to hold it all. I mean, it was like really, really expertly done. Really expertly done.
Wow.
And then what happened after that made both L.A. and I really ticked us off, because someone at the museum called a Fox affiliate in Santa Barbara area, and they did a piece about it, saying that it's a hoax and someone got taken in for money, and made it into a story that had some elements of truth in it. Most of the story was completely wrong, and I called the reporter and I said, do you realize we've been working 3 years on this one story, and all the stuff you said is wrong? Paul Collins at the museum didn't tell us it was fake. We knew that when we took it to him. He wasn't the discoverer of that it being fake. That was mostly L.A. and Dr. Barry. As I was looking at a microscope, they were over there finding this stick of wood. That's really what happened. And so we knew it was fake, and my thing was we needed to know how it was faked, and that's what Paul Collins was supposed to help us with. But instead, the museum, for publicity's sake, made up this story that they discovered it was a fake and that someone got taken in and spent a lot of money, and it made Jaime really embarrassed, as if he, is an idiot, and he's not.
Yeah.
And I was really upset, and I told him, I said, you've made a lot of people really angry with this story because it's not even true. Yeah. But that's our media nowadays. Our media doesn't they don't sweat the details. They don't care.
Yeah. Well, Richard, I've known of Jaime for quite some time. I've read some of his information. I've watched his work. I've seen a lot of his UFO activity. And really, Jaime is basically, you could say, a Art Bell of Mexico with the UFOs and the strange, the paranormal, et cetera, et cetera. But he's very honest, and he's very upfront on what work he does do.
Well, he is, and he's not always right, and he'll be the first one to tell you that, and it's like he just wanted our help, which we were happy to do. And we just happen to have a budget for DNA testing, so we used some of that budget to check this thing out because we thought it was an important discovery. And if it's fake, we wanted to know that too. We wanted to know what it was and how someone could have faked it if it was fake. When something looked as real as that, how could you possibly have faked it? Well, now we know. And we're showing that openly. And now I have to redo the demonstration, which I should have that out in just a few days. But it's interesting. I mean, it's going to be at least 45 minutes long, just showing how this thing was debunked. I mean, it was complicated.
Wow. In all the research that Jaime's done down there in Mexico, has he talked to you about what his take on the UFO enigma is all about? What's having done as much research as he has, what's his actual opinion on it? Do you know?
Well, I kind of know his point of view. He thinks that they're here observing us, watching us. He thinks that he kind of leans towards the Vatican's point of view because he knew Balducci before he passed away. He actually went to his house once. So these are guys that were basically saying if an alien comes down, we'll want to be the first ones to baptize them. Remember that a few years ago? You heard him say that? And they said we've got to accept our space brothers. And I guess what I'm getting at here is that the world's going to be easily deceived by this.
Yes.
I mean, when it actually happens, it's going to be so profound, and I mean, it's already happening. I'm just like, I mean, Roger used to have this expression, and we used to talk about ESETI, and how silly it all was, and he called the SETI part was silly attempt to investigate. That's what it meant. And no, silly effort to investigate. So, and it's true because people are taking pictures of UFOs all over the world by the thousands. And here we are with our radio telescopes listening for signals. It's totally absurd. But that's the world we live in right now. Nothing makes sense in the media. Nothing we're told is true. Everything is a lie. And that's basically pointed out in the book of Daniel where it says, and truth was thrown to the ground. And I believe it's referring to these days that we're living in now.
Yes.
And that's what's happening. We can't trust what anybody tells us in the media to be true at all. And this is why there are so many people using alternative media and various blogs and shows like yourselves. And, the one guy that's really making enormous headway is Alex Jones. I mean, his stuff is like exploding on the internet. And some of his postings get 3-4 million hits, like just in days. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, they're getting larger numbers watching some of their YouTube videos than any of the networks get on a daily basis for their news programs. It's insane. But that's because the news media, I don't really understand who's paying their bills at this point because they can't have much advertisers anymore because it's all completely ultra left-wing, and it's not even truthful information.
Yeah. Well, we're heading
into the...
Yeah, go ahead.
I just was going to say, it used to be, somewhat left-leaning, but there was also some kind of a balancing act going on, I can't imagine our news reporters of old, even if they were somewhat liberal-minded, like the Walter Cronkite of the world or Dan Rather and some of those guys, ever doing anything as mischievous and ethically wrong as what all these companies do today. I mean, they would have gotten fired in those days for such activities. And now it's like, there's an agenda. There's a much larger agenda going on, and I guess the agenda creeps me out as much as the news is just truthful, because who's controlling this? I mean, is it George Soros? Is it, who is it? It's complicated. It's all in the shadows, and as just regular citizens, we're left in the dark about it, but we're being affected by it. And there was, now you got Drudge Report is basically beating out some of the major news networks in just numbers and daily numbers.
That's right.
People are looking for some other source of information other than news, and no one's watching it anymore because they know they're being lied to.
Well, actually, Richard, I get a lot of my information about asteroid strikes and cosmic stuff on the Drudge Report. Matt Drudge, he actually posts a lot of this information that we're not getting on mainstream at all.
Well, it's true. I mean, there was and RT is even doing it, and I know some of that's propaganda as well, but you got Larry King on RT now. I mean, go figure that. I mean, that's like really crazy. But they were talking about this big asteroid. You guys probably saw that on the 23rd of September. And and I had my friend sending me all this stuff, and even Glazerson picked up on it and did a Torah code table about the asteroid on the 23rd of September. It comes up in the Torah codes. And I'm going, okay, well, coincidentally, in 2015, on the 23rd of September, they said the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And I told him that. I said, I don't know what to say about it because we're lied to so much of the time, and we don't know the truth on this. And yet, in Glazerson's table, it talks about it, and they saw a bolide up in the northeastern United States and parts of Canada on the 23rd of September that lit up the sky. Did you read about that?
I sure did.
Yeah, they had an impact event. Wasn't it on the 23rd, Larry?
I believe it was, right there off the coast of Australia.
Well, yeah, but there was this one like up near Quebec or someplace like that. I mean, I'd have to look up. There's so much material coming out, guys. I apologize. I just can't keep up with it all. There's so much stuff.
But there was an impact event off the coast of there was an impact event off the coast of Queensland, Australia. It shook houses. I guess it did not create a tsunami per se, but they checked the what do you call them, the buoys that measure wave height.
Oh yeah.
And it did change the wave height.
The
so it was
markers.
An impact event on the 23rd.
And so are you saying that, or are they saying it landed in the water somewhere?
Yes, just off the coast of Australia.
Wow, I'd love to have seen that happen. That would have been exciting.
Well, they kind of kept it quiet, didn't they, Larry? There wasn't much said about it.
No, it was. I think some of the Asian news covered it a little, and of course Australia, New Zealand, etc. But mainstream media in America, not a word.
No, they're not going to tell us anything of any scientific nature or anything. And yet, those of us that follow this stuff, because of our knowledge of prophetic backgrounds, that I tend to take really seriously, because this stuff's actually happening. Just the way it says it's supposed to from biblical texts. These things are unfolding before our very eyes. And I wouldn't even be thinking about asteroids if it didn't talk about them in Revelation. I would say it's all baloney. But there's supposed to be, according to the Book of Revelation, 2 asteroids that hit. One's called Wormwood, and then there's another one that's not really given a name, but it makes the waters bitter. And I know you guys know about all of that stuff. Wormwood is not Nibiru. I can't believe some people say Nibiru is Wormwood. That's ridiculous. We're not going to have a planet hit the Earth. That's not what it says. It says something like a star burning, as it were, a lamp as big as a mountain. Now, that's not a planet. It's the size of a mountain, so it's big. And if it's burning, that means it's entered the atmosphere, and it's going to hit probably in the ocean or something. It's going to be big. And we won't have much warning when that happens. Why do you think all of these elites are building bunkers and all this stuff? They know something's about to happen. They have information that I'm sure we don't have. But
I think they know where it is.
We're going to be here when it happens.
We'll just see a flash in the sky, probably.
Yeah, it'll be really bright. It'll light up the sky like noonday, just like it did in Chaplin.
Yeah, it's like the movie Deep Impact or Armageddon. Those movies were made, I thought, for a reason. They're kind of a forewarning of events to come.
Sure. And then the movie Knowing, where the solar flare. Now, that, there's scriptures about all of these things, or we wouldn't even be talking about it. I mean, the book of Isaiah talks about, there's going to be, the sun's going to be 7 times brighter. There's really cryptic and unusual comments made about the sun of righteousness.
Yes.
Glazers and I have had discussions about this. Now, it's not sun, S-O-N. It's sun, S-U-N. Now, that's not like sun worship or anything like that. It's the sun of righteousness, and Glazerson and I have talked about that. He said that all of those who are of the right mindset will be healed by it, and all the evil people, wicked people, will be killed by it. That's what the rabbis believe. Now, it's not that. I think what we've done, and this gets into some really controversial areas, but I think Christians and the Jews have got to start talking to each other. Has to. Because they have information we don't, and we have information they're afraid to look at. So it's okay, guys, what are your ancient mystical texts say about this? And they go, well, in the Midrash it says this, in the Zohar it says that, in the Kabbalah it says this, and in the Talmud it says that. And it's in tons of information. Now we have to realize that, okay, maybe we're not going to agree with all of that. And we don't have to accept it as being scripture, and I don't think even a lot of the Jews accept it as scripture either. Right. Some of them have told me, like, well, this could be some rabbi's wet dream of how he really wants things to happen. So, it's not really that it's necessarily cast in stone, but yet some of these things that they have in their mystical texts make sense. Like during the time of the flood and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, then you've got Native American prophecies. You even have the mystics and the seers. And I always go back to what the Lord said. I will pour out my dreams and visions upon all flesh.
Yes.
As the times of the end come near. Well, that means all flesh. Then you cannot just rule out something because a Native American said this was going to happen, or a Jewish sage said this was going to happen. I think it behooves people to investigate all of this.
No, and Rabbi Glazerson, God bless him. Yeah, God bless him. He's told people just about me. So it says in our Jewish mystical text that in the end of days the the Goyim or the Gentiles is going to lead people to the Torah. He blames me for that. Because I'm looking at it like I think these Torah codes are important. And they're all mathematical. And yet I have detractors that write on anytime I put something up on YouTube, this is satanic, it's like divination. It's like, I'm going, no, it's not. This is just stuff that's encoded in there, and we're just reading it. I mean, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Just say, okay, we're going to ignore it. Not. I can't do that. It's freaking interesting. And if we, you know, the Torah was a very weird set of books given under very strange circumstances. I'm not surprised there's stuff encoded in it. That's why guys like Sir Isaac Newton and Rabbi Weissmandel from the 50s and all these guys worked so hard to try to figure out what was going on with it. And of course, Chuck Messer thinks it's holographic, that there's layers of data in the Torah. I think he's probably right. You know, that there could be some kind of data compression going on in there. So even if you lose some lines of the text, you can still recover it. I mean, all of those things speak to incredible intelligence to put this together. So, you know, guys like Michael Drosnin, who wrote the first Bible Code book, admittedly say that he doesn't believe in God, thinks that the Torah might have been encoded by aliens, by some high intellectual alien race. I mean, he throws that idea out. I mean, the funny thing about all of this is that Christians are so quick to criticize, go, well, all right, let's explore that idea. What if an alien race encoded the Torah? Well, we know that on Mount Sinai, there was most likely angelic hosts there doing stuff with Moses. We don't know what was going on. There could have been time compression, all sorts of stuff happening. And today, if we saw that happening, would we say those are aliens? I bet we would. Because we've never seen anything like that. And we're used to Hollywood's appearance of alien races glowing and coming down spaceships, appearing and disappearing and all. Okay, they're aliens. Okay, great. Fine. I'm cool with that. In the same token, we could say Yeshua, Jesus Christ, was an alien. We could say that. Because he was like the first hybrid creature. He's part God, part man. Now, that's a hybrid.
Yeah.
Now, what is all of the satanic stuff that goes on in the end of days is all about, and all of the stuff that happened with the Nephilim, when you read in Enoch, they were fooling around with genetic manipulation. I mean, L.A. is really into this, and I'm delving into his territory a little bit here, but that stuff is really intriguing. They were changing plants and animals, it says in the book of Enoch. Hey, guess what's happening now, guys? China's like doing genetic manipulation on human beings.
Yeah,
they had really strange, weird things happen. There was like I think it was in China, there was a pig born with a penis stuck to its forehead. I mean, really weird. And there's ancient mystical texts that say in the end of days that women would give birth to monsters.
Yes.
And I think all that's going to happen. I think it's because once you start messing with the DNA, something that complicated, and you don't know what the heck you're doing, you're going to end up with monsters.
Well, I'll tell you what, Richard, you know, when you're talking about that, Stewart and I were talking the other day, you look at this Zika virus that we don't even know where it came from, except I believe I've seen a code or two. I think Rothman may have done a code on Zika that talked about DNA and genetic. And anyway, what's interesting, though, it shows you've seen some of the and I hate to say this, I don't mean anything bad by it, but you've seen some of the children that have been born after Zika, and they are not normal. I'll put it that way.
Oh, no, they have the really small heads and things. It's terrible what's happening.
Yeah,
There's a patent on that Zika virus, you know.
It would surprise me.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Rockefellers or who it was, but somebody owns the patent on the Zika virus. It's a manufactured virus. Somebody dug up the patent on it.
Oh, man.
We are dealing with very, very evil, total black hearts that are taking over the planet. You know, we're involved in the Psalm 2 war. Is really what this is all about. The whole goal is to remove Jesus Christ, God the Father, and the Holy Ghost. That's what it's about.
And the earth will be a very dark place, and people will be deceived. I mean, that's what's happening. I mean, the whole thing with Islam, and then the latest news on Israel is that they're bracing for another Hamas attack like what happened in 2014, except it'll be worse this time. And they're saying that Hezbollah now has something like 200,000 rockets pointed at Israel.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that this time that Israel's going to hold back. I think they're going to do some serious damage if they start. But there's going to be a lot of people killed in Israel because if you have that many rockets, even if 90% of them hit open fields or cars or something like that people aren't in, you still got
tremendous damage.
20,000 rockets that are going to hit somewhere.
Well, I've been following very closely, guys, some reports from some of the generals that are under Netanyahu with the IDF, and they are reporting and warning Hezbollah especially and Syria because there's a threat now on the northern border and the southern border at the same time, but they are warning, the generals are, that they are going to hit back extremely hard, and especially warned Hezbollah that you won't recognize where you live anymore if you do attack us. So, that it doesn't sound good.
Well, I agree. I think it's, also the Gaza Strip is going to be just leveled because it's already a humanitarian disaster area. I mean, they've got like open sewers and they've got impure drinking water and no one's got a job there, and they've turned it into a hellhole. And like in Watchers 9, I found this quote from one of the Hamas leaders, and we're not leading our people to destruction, we're leading them to death.
Yeah.
That's what they want. So what's happening now is that all of the rabbis are like on fire. They all believe that the return of the Messiah is imminent. Imminent. I mean, this is, we're talking like 57, 77, the year of completion. I mean, according to, that's going to happen on, if my memory serves me correctly, on October the 2nd. That's Sunday, I think. That's when the Jewish New Year starts. Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and aren't we at the end of the Shemitah year? The 49th year is the Shemitah year, and then we go into the Jubilee year, right?
Well, that's my understanding is that could be when all this happens, but it's confusing because we have an overlap between the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar, whereas the Hebrew calendar is ahead of us by 3 months. So, there's supposed to be all debts forgiven and all that kind of stuff, and there may be, Trump came out in his last speech and correctly said that we are living in a bubble and it's about to burst.
That's right.
And I think that was gutsy for him to say that, and I really believe that's the case. I mean, it reminds me of 2008 all over again. And then we got Deutsche Bank, collapsing. They have like something, these numbers aren't exactly accurate, but as best I can remember, they had something like $15 billion in assets, and they owe $150 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're deeply embedded in the derivative market to the trillions, I think.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the whole
really,
banking system. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying their shareholders are bailing out, and it means that the German government's going to have to consider a bailout of Deutsche Bank, just like, we did with Citibank here in the U.S. And they've never done anything like that before. I mean, so how Deutsche Bank goes may be how we go here. We've got to really keep tabs on what's happening, and of course, physical money is rapidly on its way out.
Yes.
So that means that the banks control everything. I mean, if you have money on hand, then it's not going to be worth all that much at a certain point, and
well, it's very
how
difficult
everybody's going to pay their bills.
Yeah.
Well, what's
it's
interesting
difficult.
too, guys.
Yeah.
What's interesting too, guys, is the fact that recently we had Davis Bunn on. Stewart and I interviewed Davis Bunn, who is a really credible author that lives in the UK, and he just his book just came out this month, September, and it's called The Domino Effect. And actually, on the show, Davis Bunn said the reason he wrote the book, and it's a warning about just exactly financially what we're talking about. He said the reason he wrote the book was because he talked to the experts, and they warned him already ahead of time.
Oh yeah. It's like we're just about there, and but there is a scripture. I can't, there's so much stuff going on right now, but there's a scripture that warns people of making themselves wealthy to prepare for the end of days. And scriptures almost refer to it as an evil thing to do that, because then you're relying on money instead of God to rescue you.
Yeah,
and I always felt like, you know where that is, Stewart? I can't remember.
Yeah, that's in James. The rich people gather themselves riches for the last days. It even says why they do it. It's for the last days, but their gold and silver will be cankered, and it'll be a witness against them in the end.
Yeah, exactly. I think we just, when things get really bad, it's almost a time of in a twisted way, it's a little exciting actually, because then you really can see the hand of God functioning, where it's masked by normal life most of the time. And we had a tremendous shortfall in our income back in 2009. I had 12 assignments basically fall through because all the companies either went broke or whatever. We had 4 studios basically either go out of business or go bankrupt or have internal corruption problems. And a lot of times when people have money problems, it's not their fault. It's because someone that owes them money didn't pay them.
Yes.
And that happened to us. So at that point, we lost our house, and Mary and I was staying with one of my oldest friends, Lee Cantillon, in Hollywood, until we could get back on our feet again, because everyone that owed us money didn't pay us. It was a lot of money. But I was kind of like grinning. I'm going, okay, Lord, what you going to do this time? It's like, because then you can see you're totally beholden to God. It's like,
yes,
what's he going to do? This is not my fault. I've done everything I was supposed to do, and these huge companies went bankrupt. One of them was MGM owed us money, and they went bankrupt. And you don't think of MGM International as a company that's going to renege on their contracts, but that's what happened. We had a film that we had done called Beat the Drum, and we had an international contract which I signed with MGM, and as all of these companies are, they have 20-page contracts that protect them in every situation, but not you. That's what
they're
happens
very good at that
in the movie industry. Yeah, they're really good at it. It's why I haven't gotten in business with any studios. Really, I'm not really excited about the idea of trusting them ever again, because I had so many problems during those years with them. No one ever did what they said they were going to do. But do I think everybody in Hollywood's a crook? No, I don't. I think there's a lot of incredibly talented, interesting, fascinating people out here. People that I know and have met that have saintly characters, like Barry Morrow that wrote Rain Man, one of those saintly characters. Bob Williams, who's a good friend of mine that made the arm for Terminator, the Terminator movies, and did a lot of their special effects. I mean, Bob is a gem, and then there's other people who are musicians and effects people and graphics people. They're the best in the world. They're all working, in Burbank or in Hollywood somewhere, in little offices, and doing amazing stuff. So there's an electricity from all of that talent that's hard to describe unless you've been here and associated with people like that. And yet there's creepy people involved in these industries, and to the point where you wonder if the people that are writing scripts know something the rest of us don't know and are embedding kind of like suggestive ideas into films, about aliens and about the end of the world, like we were talking about earlier. How are they getting this information? Is it really all a story, or is there a larger agenda that's hidden that we don't know about?
Yeah. You mentioned Planet X. Have you done a lot of research on Planet X at all? I've done some, but I'm no expert on it.
I've done a lot of research, yeah. And I have friends that do lots of research. I mean, Marshall Masters, I've known him for, at least a decade. And Marshall does a lot of, not that I agree with every premise Marshall puts out there, but he's done a lot of research. He used to be a former CNN science editor back in the early 2000s, but now he does his own stuff, and he's gotten into some kind of mystical, spiritual stuff about Planet X. I think Planet X is I don't look at Planet X as being a crazy or kooky or strange idea. I think it's just emblematic of how little we really know about the universe. And it seems like even when you go back in the Jewish mystical texts, or you read the first books that Immanuel Velikovsky wrote back in the 50s about Planet X, there's something to it. This is, the only guy that believed Velikovsky's book in those days was Albert Einstein. So it's always the really smart people that consider these concepts. It's not the general public that criticize. And scriptures tell us that in the last days, men will be scoffers. Boy, we see that a lot now. Men will be scoffers.
I was just going to mention, Richard, I know a lot of people throw that term Planet X out there, but I'm intrigued by the Torah code that Glazerson and them did for you, where it talked about Nibiru, the star, and like a dwarf star, a second sun of our binary solar system. So that Nibiru intrigues me, and it's in the Torah code.
Well, it is, because in the Jewish mindset, especially the rabbinical ultra-Orthodox Jews, they believe that in their mystical texts that Nibiru, which is kind of a more contemporary name for it, in Planet X, no one knows what to really call it. It's basically referred to in Scripture as a star, which I guess would be a pretty descriptive phrase for it. But there's people that have studied this, and there's Doug Elwell, who's written a book the sign of the coming of the Son of Man, referring to Planet X as being referred to in Matthew 24. These are things we've discussed before. There's also Gil Broussard, who believes that Nibiru has come by the Earth at various degrees throughout the centuries and caused a lot of these very strange events in the Old Testament to come to pass. Now, his theories are really interesting, but they're poo-pooed by the rest of the Planet X establishment. They don't believe Gil's stuff, except Gil has this one piece of evidence that came from China called the supernova of 1024, where they saw this huge planet arising off on the horizon and didn't know what it was and called it a supernova. Well, it wasn't a supernova, it was a planet. And I've talked to Gil about this, and I said, so basically what I'm getting out of your research, Gil, is that Planet X has come by every 350 years roughly and created various havoc when it did, or nothing at all, depending on how far away from the Earth it was. He goes, that's exactly what I believe is happening. And, okay, so then you go back into the Old Testament, you read about how, back in the Old Testament, there's all these stories about how fire from heaven came down and destroyed the enemy, or the sun went backwards in space, or the Earth stood still for a day. I mean, all these things. There's all these stories about that. Well, scientifically, how can that happen? And did these prophets from 2,500 years ago just make this stuff up and just write it down? I can't believe that something that important they would just foster a hoax about those events. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So
well, they do actually take. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say something massive had to disturb or perturb the Earth's normal motion, because obviously the sun isn't the one moving; it's the Earth's rotation. So the Earth had to slow down and stop for a while. We think that happened during the parting of the Red Sea and other events in Scripture. And, it talks about Velikovsky's book talks about the North American Indians at the time saying that the oceans stood up. And then I think I mentioned this last time on your show that I spoke with Clareson about this. I said, so if Velikovsky said the ocean stood up, then could it be the time the Red Sea parted, where it says the Red Sea parted? And he goes, oh, the Red Sea, it never says in Scripture the Red Sea parted. And I'm going, what? He said it says in the correct original Hebrew, it says the waters parted. I said, so what are you telling me, Glazes? And he said, that means that the waters all over the world parted. Not just the Red Sea, all the waters parted. And when you hear stuff like that, it's like, oh, okay, that makes more sense. And we don't know what happens to water if you stop the Earth from rotating. We've never seen that happen. That would be kind of cool. It's normal gravity is all messed up. Yeah, I don't know if you would get. I don't know what would happen. It's really amazing. You'd have to have satellite views of it, or you'd have something.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think of James McKinney was big on Planet X, and all of a sudden he became kind of quiet, but he did mention there are many Planet X's. In other words, it's not just Nibiru, but there are other bodies that come wandering through. And when they come wandering through, they cause havoc. Now, I'm a firm believer that the universe is run down to the split second by the Lord, and he just sets it up, winds it up, and lets it go. And it's all been pre-programmed, all pre-planned, and ready to go.
Well, yeah, exactly. And what I'm hearing recently on this whole Planet X thing is that Planet X is coming with its own solar system in tow. That's what people are saying now. And that's going to be like passing through our solar system, and, something might have a collision somewhere, but there's, it's almost like atoms. There's so much space between electrons that you can pass things between other things without having an impact, but then there's a chance that could happen too. I don't believe the Earth's going to be impacted, because otherwise I think Scripture would tell us that. But
yes,
according to ancient Jewish mystical texts, from what Gleason tells me, there'll be this star in the sky, and everyone will see it, and it will be in the sky for 7 months. So that's why he's looking for it in the Torah code so much. And since it's also in the Jewish parlance, they believe that this star appears at the time of the Messiah. Now, this is, I have to basically explain that we're not talking about the Star of Bethlehem here. This is like another star. This is like another reference to the Messiah, because the Orthodox Jews don't believe in Yeshua's arrival, even though there's so much evidence to the fact, in my opinion, in the Old Testament, things that pointed to Jesus Christ appearing when he said he was going to appear, and they also don't necessarily see the something that Chuck Missler once said, and he got all choked up and could hardly speak for a moment as we were interviewing about this. He believed that, that Moses, when he lifted the snake up on the pole, remember that, and people would be healed from it. Remember that story? That later Yeshua comments, when I be lifted up, he's referring back to this action in the Torah, but yet there won't be any Jewish rabbis that see a connection between those two things. But, eventually they will. They will, because Scriptures tell us that they will look upon him who they have pierced and weep for him as a long-lost son. That's going to happen. It'll be an incredible day when the blinders come off. But I believe that the reason the blinders... I just got to say, and then I'll shut up. I believe the blinders are on because of the comment they made at the crucifixion, his blood be upon us and upon our children. And I think that's the result of that comment. I really do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And in order to bring in the Gentiles, blindness was taken on part of Israel, so that the whole world became involved in this salvation message. And that was the only way, evidently, it could be done, because remember he said, if you would accept Elijah here, or I can't remember exactly how it was worded, then we will continue on with the millennial reign. It would have actually almost begun back then, but they wouldn't accept it.
Right. And
so
yet there were thousands of Jewish folks that did accept the message of Yeshua, and it was mostly just the elites that were against it, feeling like, but I understand why they felt this way. They felt that, okay, the Ten Commandments say, they'll say, have no other gods before me. I mean, and they were completely steeped in the Torah and the Ten Commandments, to the point where their dogma became more powerful than reality. They couldn't see the actual evidence in front of them and what the Scriptures had been predicting. They couldn't see that. And yet I understand the ones that, even today, they have little Torah scrolls, and they're like in little boxes, and they have like leather straps, and they tie them onto their foreheads. They have the Torah like on their foreheads, or they tie them onto their arms. And when you have a mezuzah on your doorpost. I mean, it has a little Torah scroll, and I have one on my house. I thought it was cool, so I put one on my house. But over in Israel, when you do that, I mean, they have this thing where they touch it and they kiss it when they enter the room. I mean, it's like the Torah is super revered. I mean, it's like the actual living Word of God. I mean, this is how important it is to them. But I think because they've done that, and it's not that I disagree with that, I just think they've taken it to extreme. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if I didn't think the Torah was divinely inspired, I wouldn't be looking into the Torah codes.
Yeah, well, that's
they're
right.
totally mathematical. They're totally mathematical. There's nothing divination going on. No one's like saying incantations or using a Ouija board to find this stuff. It's all like, oh, I wonder if this word's in the Torah. You type it in the computer and hit enter, and oh, there it is. It's in there 52 times. It's very matter of fact.
Have you got any more new information on the Torah codes? I know they keep coming out with new ones. It seems like 2016, 2017 are the pivot years. Have they gone beyond that at all, or anything new there?
Well, I just put up Glazerson 2 weeks ago. He calls me up and says, Richard, I'm coming to America. I said, oh, great. And he says, I'm coming to see my son. He has a son in New York named Craig Glasser, really great guy, studying to be a rabbi or is a rabbi, I'm not sure. But Craig, I've talked to Craig. He's really great. So Glazerson comes to visit him and promote his books, of which he's written like 30.
Wow.
And when he comes to the U.S., he always flies to L.A. just to see me. It's like I'm kind of like dumbfounded. It's like, really? I said, well, I really missed you. I'd love to see you if you're going to be in the States. He said, let's come tomorrow. I have to show you this new stuff. So he brings his new tables, and he comes up to my studio, and I put him up on the big screen, and we do translations. He tells me what it means, and we discuss it. And he gets ideas for new Torah codes from me, and I get ideas from him, and we love working together. It's just delightful. I mean, he's just I can't tell you how much I love and respect Rabbi Glazerson. He gives me views into things I would never think about if it wasn't for him. And so he gives me this table. Well, I mean, he did too, and we did a video about it. But let me pull up the text here so I can actually read it to you. Well, the first thing he does, and I already knew this, he goes, oh, I found another table on Pinlight. He keeps looking up my company name. Don't ask him to do this. He keeps doing it. He goes, it's Pinlight every 4 letters. I go, well, I don't even need a computer to find that one. You can count with your finger and find Pinlight. And it's on the same line, which I knew in the past, with the word ephod. And right next to the words Torah code, and then down below that in the plain text, or some of it's plain text and some of it's encoded, but it's all on the same line. It says, will show to the world the deeds of God. But then on the line right under Pinlight, it says 5776. That's this year.
Yeah.
And then off just a few more letters, it says 5775. And 5775 was the year that we released the film. So he did all that, and he said, you got to show it because this is divine, this is from God. It shows that Pinlight is involved with the Torah codes and all that stuff. So then the next thing is that I did a table about Hillary, and we have to show people this. I said, okay, what's the table? And because I've been asking him about Hillary and Trump, and he's done one on Trump as well. But this one
what
says...
did he find?
Well, he's found various things. He hasn't done one on the election that I know of yet. But he sends me so many tables I can't keep up with it. But this one says, sick Hillary, in a sentence, all with the same skip. And then off to the right it says, with infection. And I said, well, okay, with infection. I said, what is the word for pneumonia in Hebrew? And he told me what it was. I said, well, can't we find something in the Hebrew paper so we know the modern interpretation? He goes, yes, that's what this is. In Hebrew, they call pneumonia an infection of the lungs. That's how that is termed. So in the Torah code tables, it says with infection, and then on the other side it says lungs. And then it says 776 for this year, and then below that it says the woman. So that's all in the Torah code table. But then the most startling one that he brought was this one that said, you know, we have like resonance, and you have these Torah codes that come up at different angles and backwards, forwards, vertical and horizontal and all that. This particular one has kind of a damning statement, but it's all in the same ELF skip. It says, the abomination unto the Lord, and then below that it says United States in the same sentence. And then below that it says, what is their heart? It's like a question. So it is, what is their heart? United States, the abomination unto the Lord. Like the United States is in big trouble. Crossing that line, it says they are defiled. Crossing that line. In the plain text, it says that. Just a few letters to the right in a vertical code, it says the left. At the top of the table, right near this big long sentence, it says 776, which is 2016. And then crossing this thing at right angles, also in a diagonal line, are the words Hillary and Obama intertwined.
Wow.
In the Hebrew characters. At the bottom of this long sentence, which, you know, we didn't have time to explain this in such detail in the video, on the bottom it says, in the plain text, under this whole thing, what is their heart, the United States, the abomination unto the Lord, it says, cursed will be the taker of bribery.
Whoa.
Then just above that, in the plain text, non-encoded, underneath all of these encoded words, it says, an abomination unto the Lord thy God. So this is one of those super rare occasions where the encoded text and the plain text in the same table say the same things.
Wow.
And that plain text is located in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1. I mean, it's so that when he showed me that, I said, what are the chances of that happening?
Yeah.
Well, the Lord's warning us, I guess, if people aren't smart enough to have already figured it out.
Well,
what about Trump?
I mean, there's some rabbis who have come out about Trump saying that he is a messiah of sorts. And let me find this link so I can.
Well, Larry and I have been wondering whether, you know, Larry's been saying, well, he might be kind of a Cyrus, the Persian,
right?
And you know,
that's what Henderson thinks. Rabbi Mendel Kessin believes he has a series of very lengthy lectures on YouTube, but let me see if I can. I wasn't planning on doing this. I didn't have this up here. Let me see if I can find the link. Here we go. His lecture. Now remember, this isn't a Christian viewpoint, but it's a rabbi talking about Trump, which I kind of find really fascinating. And I listened to the whole thing. It's called 21st Century Number 6, Spiritual Forces Behind Trump's Opposition and the Light of Redemption. Now, he did this lecture on July 23rd, 2016. And it's powerful, the stuff he's talking about. I don't know if you would necessarily hear this same idea in a Christian church, especially some of it where, this particular rabbi, as brilliant as he is, he kind of refers to Yeshua as the other guy, he calls him. It's really kind of, I get a big bang out of that. And I would really like to meet him and talk to him sometime, because, Mendel Kesson, I think, is a really brilliant guy. Even though he doesn't believe in all things like the way I do, it doesn't mean that we can't learn from each other. This guy's fascinating. So, but the problem is that people are so close-minded about their approach, and I think also then you go, people like sway completely the other direction and totally embrace Islam and let all these people into the country that want to murder us. Oh, we've got to, bring all people in, and show them that America is a loving country. And it's like, it's ridiculous. It's like, where's your common sense?
Yeah,
I mean,
they don't have any.
It's incredible. There's no common sense used. So Trump will say, well, we've got to have some way to check these people. We don't know who they are. And then he's referred to as racist. It's like, what?
Yeah,
This one is having common sense racist. It's ridiculous.
So
I think people have had it.
So what are they going to, how does he feel then? Is Trump going to be elected, or doesn't he say that?
Well, he thinks Trump is America's last chance of redemption. And of course, no one agrees totally with everything about Trump. No one's perfect. Mm-hmm. But compared to Hillary, I mean, I released an article, and did we talk about this, Larry? I'm trying to remember. There's so much going on, and if I repeat myself, I hope I'm not, getting Alzheimer's or something. But I mean, it's like there was this guy that there's just so much material coming out that I never know what to think. But there was this guy who was on a chat room who said he was with the FBI, and people started asking him questions, and he started talking about the Clinton Foundation and saying it was so corrupt that most of the people in government, at least 200 of them or something like that seemed to be implied, are completely and totally treasonous. And it's so big they don't know how to deal with it.
That appears
to be
why
so. This is why you have various people, they suddenly are murdered, or they get hit by a car, or they've said something about something, and all of a sudden they're not around anymore. They just disappeared. And I think people are literally fearful of that happening to them. But you can't live in fear. You can't live your life in fear, because then you're a coward, and that's God doesn't like that, because he knows that this life is brief and not the only thing going.
Yeah, you have to be prudent, observant of what's around you.
Yeah. Gotta be prudent.
But there's nothing about him being elected necessarily. There have been Christian prophecies that say he's going to be elected by a landslide, and then there are other prophecies that said, no way, Obama is going to rig this in such a way that he will remain in office, and they'll figure out a way to do that, either false flags, terror attacks, various all over the country. Maybe World War III develops. That situation there in Syria appears to be getting extremely volatile. And so, I mean, there's a number of ways that he could keep Trump out of office, even if he was elected.
Well, yeah, there's several different views. I mean, some of which you've just mentioned. I mean, that Obama, something could happen, a false flag attack or an actual attack, and then Obama decides to stay put to keep the country together, or uses some excuse to do that, and has already amended the Constitution so you can do a third term. I mean, he did that a couple years ago. And no one knows that, or not very many people seem to know it, even though it's in the public domain that he's done that.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if he did that. But then, on the other hand, there's some people that believe that he really wants to take over the UN after his time in office is over. At which point, like if Obama takes over the UN, then all of a sudden he's like lording his approach over the Middle East and over Israel and over everything. He could be, promoting his views in that direction, and we already know he's very pro-Muslim and very anti-Christian, anti-Jewish by virtue of the fact of what he's done. So if that were the case, there's a lot of people that even think, and he's joked about this openly. At some meeting they had, he said, people are actually saying that I'm going to bring on the end of the world. Remember him saying that?
Yeah.
Yes.
He actually said that. And it's like, well, I mean, he's at the right place at the right time. And we don't know what's really going to happen or any of those things. And what's a quick way to diffuse all that is to make a joke about it. But
what was very interesting, too, was... Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. A lot of people think there's a very large percentage of people that believe Obama is the Antichrist, and as well as some of my Jewish acquaintances believe that. They believe that that's who he is. And it's a shocking percentage of people think that's the case. Well, and yet a lot of the Jews aren't really familiar with the abomination that causes desolation, the Daniel 8th prophecy that's also echoed by Yeshua in Matthew 24, who basically says when these things happen, and also in Luke 21 it says the same stuff. So it's in the Bible 3 times. So we know something's about to happen. There'll be this dude that stands in the holy place, and then all hell breaks loose. Now, it doesn't say what the holy place is. We're assuming that's the temple, but it may not be. It could be a holy place that the Muslims think is holy. Or it could be some place on the Temple Mount that's considered holy. You see what I'm getting at here? So you have someone who is promoting Muslim faith, like Obama. Would it be unusual to see Obama visiting that area and standing on the holy place? No, I don't think so. I could really see that happening. Couldn't you?
Well, he's in Jerusalem today. He's in Jerusalem today. On the Black Moon.
So, I mean, it's really weird, isn't it? I mean, so if that happens, then the scriptures say, don't even go up and grab your coat because all hell's going to break loose, and head for the mountains. And remember all of that? Some of it's in Matthew 24, some of it's in Luke 21.
Mm-hmm.
It's in Luke where it says to head to the mountains, and like I always wonder, well, what if it's nuclear? I mean, assuming that's what it is, why would going to the mountains help? I never understood that. And then we've learned that Netanyahu they've been building fallout shelters in the mountains surrounding Jerusalem. I've been to those mountains. So you'd go to the mountains because that's where the fallout shelters are going to be.
Isn't that interesting?
And Jesus knew that 2,000 years ago.
Well, it's like the phrases in the book of Revelation where he says they go into the dens of the mountains. And what do we got? Cheyenne Mountain, and who knows how many underground tunnels have been burrowed out, and we know there are huge cities underground. And now we have videos from truckers who go through those, thousands of miles underground tunnels. And when you tell people about that sort of thing, they just kind of laugh and roll their eyes and think you're nuts when you can literally prove it. You know, this has been going on for years.
Yeah, they have actual footage underneath the Denver airport. I mean, I've seen that on Jesse Ventura's show when he did that. I haven't seen the problem with some of this is that we've seen footage like this, and Bob Fletcher, who's a Planet X expert, put out hours of video with all this stuff. The problem with it, and I told L.A. this, we discussed, I said, look, I've watched all of Bob Fletcher's videos. They were, I don't know, I spent 3 or 4 hours watching them all because I wanted to see everything he had. I just said, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch all this stuff. And I did. And it's like underground and like semi-trucks driving through all this stuff. And I'm going, the only problem with this is I don't know where this was taken. I don't know, you know, what this was. If it's like a salt mine or, I mean, it's just like the whole fairy premise, like where, you know, the fairy looked real and yet it wasn't real. And I don't want to tell people this is real unless I'm darn sure it's real. Now, I've been told that these things exist for years. And it makes sense to me that they're there, and biblically it seems that that stuff's happening. But
yes,
I don't think that's going to save anybody. I really think that, and I've talked to the Lord about this. I've actually prayed that, what about if all these evil people, and of course not all of them are evil, but military people that want to control the world are saved by these tunnels, then how is the whole new world formed? And I think it's going to be like a meat grinder under there. I really do. I don't think it's going to be the panacea that they think it's going to be.
That's their demise, really.
I think it's not going to be good. I think it'll be horrific. I mean, nobody knows, like, if the Earth is really wrenched out of its orbit or flipped on its side by a giant planet, if that's what's going to happen that deep underground. Nobody has answers to those questions. And I would rather stand, you know, and be boldly on the surface waiting to be rescued by, you know, God the Father than be underground cowering in some tunnel. That is not my idea of being rescued.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the movie Armageddon, where the guy wants to be on the mountaintop and watch the collision between him and planet Earth. At least he's out there and he's watching it happen. And I guess you would want to be. You know.
Yeah, I you know, and then, you know, when you read in Enoch that about the flood, interesting information there. It's not just in the book of Genesis, but there's other also Jewish mystical texts. And the only reason I bring this up is because I think we're facing a similar situation, not where we're having a flood, but where we have some planetary body perturbing the Earth in a massive fashion. And there were good people that were killed in the flood as well as evil people. Scriptures tell us that. It wasn't just like just evil people were killed. But that assumes that God is this horrible, uncaring, you know, person that just wants to murder us all. And I don't think that's the case at all, because that's just this fleshly life that we currently have, which is really kind of, you know, like the dream, and then we'll be entering the reality of life once we're released from these bodies. That's the way I look at it.
We're kind of in the matrix.
If we're alive or we're dead or, you know, whatever, what does it matter if we're with God at that point? You know, it doesn't really. That's why I think that's why it shows a lack of faith to be cowards.
Are you going to be doing a Watchers 11?
Yes, I think so. I mean, if we can get our act together, we're so busy. I mean, L.A. today is in Knoxville doing a seminar there. And we have Watchers T-shirts that they should have today that have come in. Be looking for that on LA's website. A friend of ours made them, and they really look cool. They say Watchers, have a blue circle around it. And the only reason we did this is because people wanted Watchers T-shirts to the point where they were making their own.
Wow.
I told LA, I said, oh, crap, I guess we need to make T-shirts because people want them. They're going to make them whether we, give them to them or not. So we had, about 100 of them done, I guess. And, I don't know, they'll be selling for like $20 or something. So get your Watchers T-shirt. I'm just curious to see if they sell this time. It won't have any. It'll have an X on the sleeve, so it says Watchers, and then it has an X for Watchers 10 on the sleeve. But yeah, I'm hoping to do Watchers 11. But also, we're currently I'm in the process of trying to raise funding for Torah Codes 2. Which will be Torah Codes 2, the Messiah Codes. I think it will be even more interesting than the first Torah Code movie on a much larger budget, assuming we're successful. And it will be hair-raising. All these questions you have, there'll be lots of tables and lots of interviews and people that, including there's people that I haven't interviewed before that I want to get into at this time, and that means a trip to Israel, and hopefully we won't be dodging, rockets while we're doing it.
Well, it looks like this war, we got a report from one of the volunteers that they've been asked to come back to Jerusalem. And didn't you interview, you talked to Dan Gordon, didn't you, Larry, on that? Hello?
Did we lose Larry?
Yeah, I guess we did.
Oh.
Huh.
Well,
what would you be doing on? He'll probably try to get back on. What would you be doing on Watchers 11 if you did it? What would be the plan?
The plan is to do it on Disclosure, and that would
really?
be, because we think we're so close to that event happening, and I'm planning on seeing this weekend Dr. David Jacobs because he's going to be in town, and I'm really curious. I need to talk to him. L.A. won't be here, but I'll be here, and I know Dr. Jacobs from Watcher 7, so I'm hoping to talk to him and maybe get some of his thoughts on camera because he's a brilliant man and one guy that I really respect for his research on, what's been happening and what he thinks is about to happen.
So I suppose you're pretty all aware of the new embassy over there in Iraq. Okay, I think we got Larry
I know that
back.
there's a lot going on over there. There's a lot going on, and they're reclaiming their oil fields again, and they're getting rid of ISIS, and yet they've still had some problems with that. But one guy that's really up on all of that is Gil Broussard is studying that all the time to see what's happening with Iraq because it seems prophetic. So we're trying to follow that as best we can, but they're having some really interesting stuff going on in their government right now.
I'm back.
Well, Larry,
there he
you
is.
dropped off there for a little while. Yeah, we can hear you.
No, I didn't drop off. It was like I'd been muted. I was talking, but nobody could hear me.
Wow.
Yeah, we couldn't hear a thing.
Yeah.
You've been censored. You probably said something politically incorrect.
Well, I probably did, but I agree with you. I did talk to Dan Gordon, and he said they certainly need the prayers over there right now, and he does too. So we're praying for him.
Yeah, I know he's been working on a movie lately, and I wrote him this morning, and I usually hear back right away, and I haven't heard from him yet. I said, "What's happening with the 200,000 rockets, from Hezbollah? What do you know?" And I haven't heard from him yet, so I'm pretty sure he'll write back with some information.
Did you know about Stan Deo's revelation of an Area 51 over there in Saudi Arabia?
No, I guess I have to go to Stan
base?
Deo's website and check that out. No, I haven't seen that. What did he come up with?
He announced it. When did he announce that? It was on one of the shows we had him on, wasn't it, Larry? But I can't remember when it was.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months ago, and I did. I think I emailed it. No, I believe I told you on a radio. I mean a phone call I did with you, Richard, about Stan Deo talking about a fallen one's base in Saudi Arabia that he'd found out about, more top secrets in Area 51.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember there was something going on with Stan Deo a few weeks ago, but I didn't remember it being that. But I'm not surprised by it. I mean, there's so much crazy stuff going on. Remember in Watchers 10 where we interviewed the soldier that said he was there by the Haditha Dam and nobody wanted to go there because it felt so evil that all the soldiers would like to run away at that point.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's stuff going on over there that's, I mean, I can't explain why ISIS would be as barbaric if they weren't being controlled by some demonic force, because what they do is so horrendous that it goes beyond any human comprehension to think these things up that they do.
Yeah. On your, if you were to do disclosure now, are you talking about disclosure like Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer?
Well, or Stephen Bassett.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen Bassett is.
Go ahead.
Stephen Bassett has been has been in D.C. for many months, trying to get D.C. to release what they know about alien life and all of those elements. He thinks Hillary Clinton knows. He's been trying to get her to release it. I mean, he really believes that. And of course, there's other people in government that he's been dealing with, trying to get them to release the truth. It's time to release it. And, people are seeing UFOs all over the world, and I don't think there is as much resistance and people being humiliated about talking about UFOs like there was in recent times, because it's like, well, explain that then. What is that thing in the sky? And we got a million things, flying around in the air that we didn't used to have, including drones and everything else there is. But some of these things defy any known type of aircraft.
Yes.
And it's getting more and more pronounced, and, everybody's got HD cell phones and all of that. So, you can't hide it much longer. So I think there's going to be, well, I know my friend L.A. Marzulli believes that, there's going to be some massive event, a nuclear explosion go off or something, and martial law will be enacted, and there'll be fear gripping the whole planet, and then all of a sudden our space brothers will appear and show us a way out of it. That's one hypothetical situation that could happen. And
well, in the book,
I think
go ahead.
Larry, you sent me this piece from Coast to Coast about a insectoid creature appearing before somebody that it was really large, and then it just disappeared.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of the Convergas UFO, where you could see an insectoid being inside the ship. And for people that haven't seen that, you can watch it on my website for free at pinlight.com. This is an actual UFO that was filmed in 2009 and that I zoomed into and using Adobe After Effects and slowed the action down. And you can see this two-eyed being that looks like a praying mantis kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And people that have been abducted describe these beings and draw them, and they look just like what's on this craft. And now we've got somebody that says they've seen one. I suppose he could be making it up because people do that. But when we talk about beings disappearing, then that can only mean that there's some kind of interdimensionality going on, some creatures that have this ability that we don't have. And we have to just understand that that's not a ridiculous notion, that can't happen, because it indeed has happened, and in Bible times it happened. Not necessarily creatures that are described in that way, but Yeshua was noted to just appear in a room suddenly. How did he do that? So to me, there's no difference in someone seeing a creature disappear in front of their eyes or Yeshua just appearing in the middle of the room and eating fish with his disciples. I mean, these things are just because we are really limited in our understanding on this interdimensional stuff, and yet I think someday we'll all be able to do that. We have to have some kind of a flip in our DNA to make it happen, but I think we're all going to be able to do that one of these days. I really do. And that's what I think will fool everybody, that, you know, we're dealing with entities from, you know, other planets and all that, when they're actually right here in another dimension and just are telling us they're from Zeta Reticuli or wherever they say they're from.
Yeah, that's the fraudulent part.
Yeah, and then your question about Planet X earlier in the show tonight, and I guess we're running short on time here. What I was going to say, and just at the time, was that Rabbi Glazerson had told me that in the ancient Jewish mystical text, it talks about a star appearing from the constellation of Orion, and that's what happened during the time of the flood. Mm-hmm. And so they were very descriptive about all of that, and that's supposed to be happening again. So we may be seeing some really incredible stuff in the near future.
Yeah. Right. Well, Richard, thanks for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. How can people get a hold of you again?
Well, you can go to one of my two websites, pinlight.com, pinlight.com, or you can go to endtodarkness.com, where we have the original Torah Code film. If you don't know anything about the Torah Codes or think they're, you know, satanic, then you need to see the film and get that sorted out in your own mind so that you're not afraid of it or think that we're, you know, doing something that's really crazy here. And the reason I did the first film was to basically explain what it all is about. And now we need to take the next film farther than that and go into the things that are happening now. And that's what we would do in Torah Codes 2. So need all of your prayers that we can get it funded so we can do that second film, because it'll take me some time to do, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, we certainly will. And thank you so much for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it. And Larry, thank you for joining.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, then
honor,
everyone,
guys.
we'll see you again, and thanks for listening. Night.